I want to invite you to a brief moment of reflection. I promise it will not take long. It's not a pop quiz, but you may want to grab a pen from right there in the pew in front of you and your bulletin. I'm going to invite you to make 2 short lists. The first, I want you to think about all of the sermons that you have heard over the course of a lifetime, throughout all the seasons of life. I want you to write down 5 titles of sermons that changed your life. Just a brief moment. See a lot of blank faces. Okay, the second list. Think about all the people in your life that shaped who you are, and write down the names of 5 people that changed your life. When I did this years ago, I was given more than just a brief moment. I could not think of 5 titles of sermons that changed my life. Not to say they aren't important, but when I had to write down 5 names of people who shaped who I was, I had a hard time narrowing it down to just 5. And it's for that reason that the letter to the Ephesians talks about the importance of our inheritance. Because we gain so much from the saints in our lives. But before you go running out, looking for people with a glowing halo or a priestly collar, we have to remember that this letter was written to all the saints in Ephesus. That a saint is as ordinary as she is extraordinary. That when you met your heart surgeon and she was standing there in the room, confident and accomplished, it is awfully hard to imagine her as a child dressing up for Halloween, where her favorite costume was My Little Pony. And when you met the president of the bank, all buttoned down and professional, there is no way you could picture him as a lead singer in his punk rock band in high school. But every saint has a childhood just like ours. That they are as ordinary as they are extraordinary. Like the people on our list. That all the ways that they supported us, taught us, and challenged us. That they were as ordinary as the extraordinary love that they showed us. That we gained so much from the saints in our lives, particularly in matters of faith, because faith is one of those things where we need the help of others to show us the way. It's the difference in looking down at footprints sketched out on a piece of paper connected with all these dotted lines that looks like a treasure map somewhere going in circles. You know, learning how to dance from a manual versus someone taking us by the hand, walking us onto the dance floor and showing us the way. That faith is seen and experienced in the lives of others. It's why the letter to the Ephesians says, with my eyes of my heart enlightened, you may know what is the hope to which God has called you. What are the riches of God's glorious inheritance amongst the saints? That it's through the lives of others that we discover the hope that God has called us to. And then, interestingly enough, there at the very end of the letter, Paul says, I am going to send Tychicus to explain everything to you in person. That the letter was not enough. Paul was going to send this dear brother and minister, as he called him, in person. Because there is something that we gain in the presence of others that is not found anywhere else. It's like the flames on the candles that we light this morning for the saints of the church and the saints of this church. That if we look carefully, the flame seems to flicker and move. It's very different from flipping on the light switch and watching that constant glow of a light bulb. That the flame moves and dances. You can't hold on to it. You can't control it. You can't capture it. All you can do is benefit from its light and its warmth by standing next to it. And it's on those days that are full of darkness that we discover how much we can see by the light of the saints, by the light of Christ that we see in their lives. In the Sermon on the Plain, which is Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount, it says, "Blessed are you who are poor. Blessed are you who are hungry. Blessed are you who weep. Blessed are you when people hate you." I have no idea how to explain how all of that is true. That is an upside down understanding of this world. There is not an explanation in this world to explain, to persuade us to believe that that is true. The only way that we discover those things is when we see them come alive in the life of somebody else. It's like when two people sit down around the table with one another. One of them is from a wealthy zip code. The other one lives in a neighborhood people consider poor. But as they sit there eating with one another, talking about life, something happens. All of their background just fades away. What they do, where they're from, where they live, all you see is two children of God learning from one another. Or it's like when we open the door after a very long week or weeks caring for a sick loved one. And there, standing on our doorstep, is a member of our Sunday school class. And we can't believe they're seeing us in what we're wearing, but we see the empathy in their eyes as they're just dropping off a casserole. And we feel inside of us this deep hunger. Or it's like when we sit down with a friend who is hurting and crying, and we cannot help but cry with them. But somewhere along the way, on our second cup of coffee, we find ourselves laughing, even in the midst of our sadness. Or maybe it's those days where we feel that resentment from others because we told our friends, you really shouldn't be making fun of someone who is such an easy target. And they're upset with us. And we carry the weight of that all day until the person they were making fun of walks by us in the hallway and quietly says, "Thank you." That we only discover those things when we see them in the lives of people around us. We were hiking in North Yellowstone on Bunsen Peak. It's named after the German chemist Robert Bunsen, who invented the Bunsen burner. You remember the first day of lab class in high school where you were warned you could burn your eyebrows off? Well, he also studied geysers, which are prevalent in Yellowstone. And as we were hiking up Bunsen Peak, about halfway up, all of the tree line just faded away. There was no more shade anywhere you wanted to find it. And also, because it's a dormant volcano, there are all these rocks that appear on the ground that make your footing difficult. So it was a hard hike, at least for an amateur. And as we kept going, before we got to the top, there was this one single tree standing there all by itself, and underneath it, this large boulder. It was the perfect oasis. So we sat down on the boulder, we rested in the shade, and we drank a little water, catching our breath. And as we sat there, I thought about all of the people who had come before us, sitting on that very rock, because it was the perfect place to stop and rest. I thought about who they were. Hikers from across the country, people who had come from other countries, families on vacation, children taking their very first hike, people driving across the country in their RV, students taking a gap year. Thought about all the languages that they spoke, all the places that they were from. And I thought about all of their stories. Wherever we find ourselves, there are so many people who have gone before us, sitting in that very place. They are the shoulders that we stand on. That they have so much to teach us. They are the saints of our lives. And they can show us the way. Amen.